Greetings and salutations. Today we'll be covering the curious case of Fahim Saleh. Born on December 12, 1986, this Bangladeshi American entrepreneur left a lasting impression. His life's journey, however, met an untimely and chilling end on July 13, 2020. Fahim was a Bangladeshi American entrepreneur and computer programmer who founded Kokada in Nigeria. Fahim was also a founding partner of Adventure Capital, a Manhattan-based venture capital firm. Born in Saudi Arabia to Bangladeshi parents who relocated for work before they settled in Rochester, New York, he taught himself programming from a young age and created a variety of online projects such as a website for his family, a teenage social platform, and a prank dial service. He would eventually graduate from Bentley University, and at the time he would state he wanted to create something that added legitimate value to humanity. He would create his first company while in high school. He used the income he got from Prank Dial to fund further ventures. Prank Dial was a somewhat controversial company because it was often used for harassment. With the dawn of 2015, Fahim joined forces with the co-founder of a ride-sharing phenomenon known as Patho. Patho was not merely designed as a mode of transportation, but supposedly it also was a conduit to bridge lives. Valued at a staggering $100 million, Patho stood as a testament to Fahim's talent. In 2018, he would also help found the Nigerian Kokada, a Nigerian ride-hail startup particularly for motorbike taxis, which gained an incredible amount of traction in the country. However, the company faced setbacks after authorities in Lagos banned motorbike taxis in 2020. Fahim would once again invest in another ride-sharing company named PiCap in Colombia. His friends would often refer to him as a visionary, the likes of Elon Musk, as his net worth would eventually climb to an astonishing $150 million. As we plunge headlong into the chilling circumstances surrounding Fahim's demise, we are met with the date, July 14th, 2020, where the wheels of fate ground to an eerie halt, as he would be found dead in his luxury apartment on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. At the discovery of this grim tableau, authorities were able to surmise that a night prior, on July 13, was when he was slain. On July 13th, neighbors would state they heard yelling from Saleh's unit. Eventually, it got to the point that they would contact a family member. After her attempts to contact him failed, she would go on to visit his condo on the 14th, only to be met by the grisly sight of the nightmarish spectacle that was the crime scene. His torso lay adjacent an electric saw, while his head and limbs had been concealed within garbage bags. His body had been strewn haphazardly throughout the dwelling. An autopsy report would go on to state that Saleh had died from multiple stab wounds, and the detectives would quickly classify the case as a homicide. A police source connected to the New York Times would peel back the layers of uncertainty and inform them that surveillance cameras and security footage depicted a man dressed in black entering the key secured elevator that led to Saleh's apartment on the 7th floor. Security footage depicted the victim struggling out of the elevator and into his apartment. Detectives would go on to note that the killer likely fled the scene through the back door after Saleh's family member had arrived looking for him. In the unfolding of the Fahim Saleh case, we must venture deeper into the shadows of deception and betrayal, which would eventually manifest into embezzlement and murder. Fahim was known as Fahmy to those close to him, and he remained blissfully unaware to the extent which his personal assistant had allegedly been siphoning his wealth until the very end. This aspect of the case unfolds 6 months prior to his tragic demise. On the seemingly ordinary evening of January 10th, 2020, Fahim would reach out to his assistant, Tyrese Haspil, in an email which marked the beginning of a chilling revelation. In said email, Fahim expressed his concerns regarding transactions totaling over $35,000, which were flagged by his accountant when dealing with his Adventure Capital Chase account. This was found out due to a $100,000 hole in his account books. The message would go as follows: "Hey Tyrese, I hope all is well. On a recent visit to my accountant, there were several transactions marked on the Adventure Capital Chase account, amounting over $35,000. My memory must be failing, but I don't remember authorizing these charges. Can you explain? This message was written on Friday, January 10, 2020 at exactly 8:37 p.m. It was through Adventure Capital, which was based in Manhattan, that Fahim chose to give back to the community. Specifically, it was a venture capital fund that he had set up to help young programmer entrepreneurs who hoped to work in developing countries. For more than a year, his personal assistant had helped manage. Unfortunately for all those involved, rather than properly manage things, he allegedly engaged in the calculated act of embezzlement, diverting a staggering $89,849 into his own bank accounts within the span of 5 months, from December 2018 to May 2019. Haspil's response to Fahim's inquiry would only be delivered after 4 hours had passed. The email went as follows: "Hey Fahim, I'm not too sure myself. Must be a clerical error." The exchange between the two men would continue throughout the entirety of the weekend, growing more tense and heated as time went on. Fahim demanded at 11 p.m. on Saturday night, "What is the explanation here?" To which Haspil would finally confess by stating, "I was desperate. I needed to pay off debt and help my family. I apologize for deceiving you, and I am ready to take responsibility for my actions." In a surprising twist, Haspil offered to make amends by proposing a strict 12-month payment plan, to which, while wary, Fahim was happy to have found a resolution, and actually had legal documents formally drafted to make this a legally binding agreement, which included a notarized confession of judgment and a promissory note designed to span 2 years. On February 10th, 6 weeks before the papers would be signed, Fahim threatened to call the police if Haspil kept ignoring his phone calls. This is known thanks to emails which were accessed from the case file. However, ultimately on March 31st, Haspil would sign, meaning police would never be notified. Prosecutors would go on to state Haspil was warned that if he did not repay the money, he would be criminally prosecuted. As it seemed, months would pass, and as far as Fahim knew, the repayment plan was working well. Haspil would make an initial payment to the victim of $20,000 on March the 3rd, 2020. He would make 4 subsequent payments of $2,916 on April 2nd, May the 5th, and June the 2nd, along with July the 1st of that year. However, things were not as it seemed, as it appeared that Tyrese Haspil could just not help himself, as he continued to steal money from the victim through a PayPal scheme which had not yet been discovered, prosecutors would note, stating Haspil was also plotting to murder Fahim regardless of the mercy that had been shown to him. It was on June 8th, 2020 that Tyrese Haspil was delivered a seemingly innocuous package from FedEx. The package, weighing barely more than 8 ounces, held a terrible secret, a tool that would later be involved in the gruesome crime, a taser pulse, which is described as packing the same knockdown punch trusted by law enforcement, but built with civilian self-protection in mind. As it so happens, the taser pulse was the same make and model of stun gun that the Manhattan prosecutors would allege was used in the fatal 2020 attack. The purchase of this taser bore the digital fingerprint, which tracked back to Haspil's iPhone XS Max, which was the same device he would later use that would later be used to search Google for "where are your joints." It must also be noted that inside the taser pulse was a hidden detail that most would miss: a multitude of candy-colored ID tags that were used to link a taser pulse to its purchaser, reminiscent of confetti or leftovers from a hole puncher, which would be scattered upon the discharge of the weapon. One of these tags would end up in an evidence bag that had been sealed by detectives from the NYPD 7th Precinct. It was labeled Anti-Felon Identification Disc and was part of the key evidence investigators would use to scrutinize this case. Fahim's murder would come only 1 month after the taser had arrived, on Monday, July 13th, 2020, at 5:53 a.m., just minutes before sunrise. The surveillance cameras would witness the unfolding drama, recording the movements of a man clad in a white dress shirt, a dark suit and tie, shoes, with his identity concealed with a COVID mask and sunglasses along with a baseball hat. This figure, prosecutors allege, was none other than Tyrese Haspil. His taser and knife had been apparently concealed within a large black duffel bag he had been carrying. Approximately 3 hours would elapse before another security camera captured the man bearing the same attire and a black duffel duffel bag entering the lobby of Fahim's luxury apartment. Prosecutors contend that it was Haspil, lurking in plain sight and patiently biding his time. Authorities would state he was in the lobby just sitting there. Then, at 1:45 p.m., Fahim would return home, attempting to avoid the mid-July day's 86-degree heat. Fahim wore a tank top, which allowed security cameras to more easily track him. Once inside the elevator with his eventual slayer, Fahim inserted the key, which would take the elevator directly to his condo, one that he had purchased only 11 months prior. It must be noted that the figure in the dark suit, presumed to be Haspil, fumbled with his own key, leading to an interaction between the two, which was briefly captured by surveillance. However, the video lacked audio, so while it is hinted that Saleh would have been able to recognize the figure, whether or not he did remains a mystery. As the doors to the elevator opened to the 7th floor, the sinister plot would be set in motion. According to prosecutors, the man in the dark suit stunned the victim with a taser. A still photo from the case file shows that Saleh had been stunned from behind. The statement from the authorities read, "The video depicts Fahim Saleh falling to the ground as the elevator doors closed." Now, this is important to note. According to Taser Pulse, its device disables an attacker for as much as 30 seconds. That brief half a minute was long enough for the killer to finish the job without meeting any significant resistance. However, the autopsy results depict the nightmarish scenario that Saleh had gone through. It showed that he had regained consciousness and attempted to fight for his life, leading to an additional 5 stab wounds in his neck and torso. The medical examiners would also note multiple incise wounds to the arm, multiple wounds to the left hand, and a contusion to the left side of the forehead. The cuts to the victim's hands were all telltale signs of somebody attempting to defend themselves, painting a grim picture of a man desperately trying to defend himself as he was going to be cut apart while he was still alive. In an unsealed search warrant affidavit, some rather cryptic details are noted. An hour and 10 minutes after the assailant entered the apartment, surveillance footage captures a change in attire. The figure was now garbed in a light-colored hooded sweatshirt along with black and white shoes, all the while holding a purple-handled vacuum in an apparent attempt to clean the elevator of any evidence. There was no indication in the file of the taser itself, the vacuum, the murder weapon, or the victim's cell phone had been recovered. Just one paper disc assigned evidence voucher number 1001335579. However, on the evening of the murder, a man alleged to be Haspil was recorded on surveillance footage on the Hudson River waterfront of New Jersey, throwing a bag into the river, or so law enforcement sources said. However, NYPD divers were unsuccessful in recovering the bag. The day of July 14th, 2020 dawned with an eerie calmness, a stark contrast to the horrors that had unfolded the night before. Authorities assert that Tuesday, Haspil began his day at the Home Depot on West 23rd Street in Manhattan. By 9:30, prosecutors would note that he had reached the checkout counter and purchased a 2-gallon sized jug of disinfectant along with other cleaning supplies. At this time, Haspil most definitely was noted to have used the victim's credit card, as stated by prosecutors, for this purchase. He also hired a car to drive him back from Home Depot to the crime scene. A photograph of surveillance footage in the case file shows a man prosecutors identified as Haspil returning to the condominium later that morning, wearing a heavy fleece-lined gray hooded sweatshirt and a Nike baseball hat along with a COVID mask, carrying a backpack. Within the backpack was a saw that had also been purchased from Home Depot, law enforcement sources would state. It must be noted that Haspil's phone showed that he had searched the Home Depot website via his iPhone for quote-unquote various models of electric saws and blades. His choice, a Makita Sawzall cordless handsaw, a rather reliable tool. 12:45 p.m., Haspil's activities took a macabre turn. His searches showed him looking for photo illustrations of human skeletal joints, which was a bone-chilling detail due to what was done to his employer. Law enforcement would note that it appeared that Haspil had realized he had made a mistake. As he was chopping the body, the battery ran out. He had forgotten to purchase a charger at Home Depot, so he went back. It must be noted that Haspil was still on his run to the hardware store at 3:30 p.m. when Saleh's buzzer rang. It was his family member, a young engineer from Brooklyn, worried after not being able to reach him for a day. Having received no answer, the victim's family member rode the elevator to the 7th floor and let herself in with a copy of the victim's key. When the elevator doors opened, she was met with the sight of Saleh's dog, Lila, and a scene that could only be described as a horrific nightmare. Evidence seized by the NYPD led detectives at the time to describe the scene on the file of search warrants as such. I observed a human torso with multiple stab wounds lying supine that was dismembered and decapitated. I observed a battery-powered electric saw near the torso, and what appeared to be blood on the blade. The limbs and head were recovered from demolition bags next to the torso. I also observed bleach, towels, and other cleaning materials. The dismembered body was identified as Fahim Saleh. By the time the killer had returned to the building with the new charger, a crowd had already begun to amass. Law enforcement would state that when he came back, he was a member of the large crowd, as surveillance footage would show. In the immediate aftermath of the crime, a chilling revelation emerged. The victim's credit card remained in use, even after the gruesome murder. On July 15th, just a day after the discovery of Fahim's dismembered remains, the card was swiped at a nearby party city, and it was used to buy a trio of gold helium balloons, 2 shaped like 2s and 1 shaped like a heart. The 13th precinct sent detectives to Party City, and according to another search warrant, an employee said the balloons had just been delivered to 172 Crosby Street, an address about a 15-minute walk north from the crime scene. The man who ordered the balloons asked the delivery driver call a cell phone number, the affidavit would state. DAs would eventually confirm that Tyrese Haspil was the subscriber to that number. Location data on the number put it in the area of 172 Crosby Street throughout the day. According to sources, Haspil had moved to the address on Wednesday morning with his girlfriend to celebrate her birthday. Said address was a 2,400 square foot, $18,000 a month Airbnb, and apparently Haspil had also used Saleh's card to shop at the neighborhood's expensive shops. As it so happens, the 3 gold balloons would be visible in the Airbnb's 5th floor window on Friday, July 17th, where Haspil was arrested in the building's lobby, leading to his iPhone being immediately seized. In the chilling aftermath of the arrest of Tyrese Haspil, investigators delved deeper into the sinister plan. It was believed that his macabre intentions extended beyond the gruesome act of dismemberment and pointed towards a disturbing plan to dispose of the remains. He had intended to burn them. Authorities obtained a search warrant for his Brooklyn apartment, and specifically, they wanted to search his basement storage locker. According to a copy on the case file, the warrant allowed investigators to seize any and all items that could be used to dispose of a human body or dispose of forensic evidence, including but not limited to incendiary devices or any object or substance capable of igniting or fueling fire. In Haspil's apartment, police would find a voucher for a navy suit, jacket, and pants, along with a white shirt. Evidence seized from the basement store locker included a black Nike backpack, which contained 5 bottles of ladder fluid WD-40, 2 boxes of Diamond brand 32 count wood matches, a bottle of mosquito repellent, and a bottle of tiki torch fuel was also found amongst these items. 4 Duraflame logs were also collected separately from the locker. Alongside them, a solitary knife and 2 leather sheaths, which raised a disturbing question. If there was one knife, where was the other? These items were quickly turned over to medical examiners in order to do a round of DNA testing. What would happen to Tyrese Haspil? As records would show, he would remain held without bail in Rikers Island jail, where he would be housed since the slaying. The top charges that were levied against him included first-degree murder, alleging that he killed his former boss to keep him from discovering the totality of the $400,000 of embezzlement he had committed, and to prevent him being turned over to the police. Even after Saleh's death, Haspil worried about his theft being exposed, as it was noted that he would continue to attempt to wipe out evidence of his embezzlement from the victims' computers. Later, in October 2020, Haspil would enter a not guilty plea to the second-degree murder charge, grand larceny, burglary, and tampering with evidence, along with concealment of a human corpse. To better understand this case, a timeline can be formed with the information provided. January 10th, 2020, Fahim Saleh contacts his personal assistant, Tyrese Haspil, inquiring about unusual transactions, beginning with over $35,000 being missing from the Adventure Capital Chase account, as suspicions and accusations of wrongdoing arise. February 10th, 2020, Saleh would threaten to involve the police if Haspil continues to ignore his phone calls, highlighting concerns about even more missing money. March 3rd, 2020, Haspil makes an initial payment to Saleh as part of a repayment plan as he continues to secretly embezzle more money from his boss. March 31st, 2020, Haspil signs an agreement to repay Saleh as a way to avoid police involvement. June 8th, 2020, Haspil receives a taser stun gun which he ordered online. July 13th, 2020, Saleh's murder occurs. July 14th, 2020, Haspil purchases cleaning supplies from the Home Depot using Saleh's credit card. July 15th, Saleh's credit card is once again used to buy gold helium balloons from Party City. July 17th, 2020, Haspil is arrested and his iPhone is seized. Shortly thereafter, police find incriminating evidence in Haspil's apartment and his storage unit, including items related to body disposal. As this tale of trust torn asunder comes to a close, we note that Tyrese Haspil, the personal assistant, was believed to have been perpetrating a pernicious plot and had potentially been planning premeditated murder, seems to have exploited the trust that the victim, Fahim Saleh, had placed in him. If you remained with me until the end, I thank you, and I do hope you stay tuned and subscribe for more content.